And welcome to, thank you. Good morning and welcome to the October 12th meeting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Pam Weegan. I'm the chair of the CJCC. A few housekeeping items before we start the meeting. We ask that all members please turn on video if you have it. We ask that all members and presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking. We ask that you please identify yourself each time you speak. If you have a public comment to make during the public comment section of the agenda, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. And we'll be tracking the raising of hands to watch to see who needs to speak next. Recordings of the CJCC meetings are available on the CJCC website after each meeting. Our first agenda item today is Karu with the artists helping the homeless. Is Karu on? Pulled over.
I'm moving him in, Pam.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Karwu, we're ready for your topic if you're ready to present.
I'm technologically challenged.
No problem.
PowerPoint. So let me call my guy to put the PowerPoint. He's waiting on there. I just talked to Dr. Craven about that.
Is it Michael Clark?
Jeffrey Kimbrough. He's going to have a...
Okay.
I got him.
Got him? Great, thanks. I'm just so technologically challenged. Okay, so I went ahead and did a PowerPoint to kind of share with what we do as artists helping the homeless. Jeff, can you get the next slide? We are a nonprofit organization to try to homeless community by filling the gaps in service between hospitals, shelters, rehabs, judicial systems, and detoxes. We do not believe in just survival. We want people to build their life and become the best version of themselves. We want them to thrive, not survive. Next slide. So what is the difference between surviving and thriving? Surviving meaning that we try to fulfill the functional needs, finding a job, making ends meet, trying our best to keep up. Thriving meaning that we find our passion to do what in our life, finding a career that we like, to have a chance to build our own character and breaking the cycle of homelessness and finding true purpose in our own life. Next. There are many gaps surface that when they are homeless, they cannot get out of those gaps. So that's why they become stuck in the cycle of active addictions, homelessness, and incarcerations. So for us to release from jail, a lot of basic things that we need to do is finding a residence. That's number one. But your residence should be outside your old life so that you don't fall back into the old trap of things. Then you have to have a chance to get employment, and you have to do your outpatient or classes. You have to go follow through your POs with your court, and you have to have the medications. And of course, you have to have all your legal documents to get jobs. You have to follow with probation, parole meetings, try to reconnect with your family, and then you have to pay your fines and restitutions. Some of them might need individual counseling. Some of them might need community services. So of course, the most important part is staying clean. But that's a lot of work for somebody who has just got out of jail or get out of treatment with $0, 0 places to go, because every single one of those items becomes a challenge in itself. So next. Jeff. Okay, and so we have to approach how to address this journey, and so the way we help them to do that is to change their life, to truly do something different. So we make sure that we provide them a safe place to live, which is really important. We provide transportation for all the appointments to work, to school, to CPOs and everything else. We provide peer support. Peer support to me is very important because they have somebody that has been there, done that, know what they are doing, and then continue so that they can share the knowledge how to get recovery, how to address the system they had to deal with. We have case manager to guide them through the systems. We also provide a doctor's office. The reason why we do that is a lot of times in their setting, so if they have any physical health challenge, will be go to the emergency room. And so, but we don't want them to keep accumulating emergency room expenses, because each time you go to the emergency room in Kansas City, it's $2,000. They don't have the money. And then we don't want the community to pay for it either. So every week we have a doctor to do proactive medical care to make sure that if they have any question about any basic health care, answer those so that we don't have to take them to emergency rooms. And we also encourage them to get the COVID-19 vaccination. So every 3 weeks, we have a group of nurses come out to vaccinate everybody that did not get vaccinated. We provide NAAA meetings and our own mental health meetings. We encourage, because I'm Asian, so I encourage them to do study, go to college, go to vocational trainings and things like that. Once they get all those things lined up, then we will help them look at housing. So of course, then we also have a budget management, so to make sure that when they're ready, so their budgets are managed and so that they can move on. Jeff, next. The importance of transportation is really, really challenging, because if you release from jail, so if you don't have a transportation to go to see your PO, to go to all your appointments, especially the first week, they have all these release requirements. So we want to make sure that they have no restrictions, no limitations of getting to a place safely and through transportations. In the beginning, the transportation is also important, because if you just give them a bus pass, which is cost money to begin with, and also we don't want them to have the opportunity to get into trouble and get the old playground. So the transportation becomes a safe place for them to get to a place safely without getting detours, without getting into troubles. Next. And then again, I want to mention that all our co-workers are certified peer support mentors. So that way they can really relay what they gone through, and that they can provide like real life experience to guide them through that and show them the example, what could be done in the future, what can we establish. We also, the peer support will teach them how to do financial literacy, how to restore their credit, because it's really important if they want to move on with life, they have to learn how to budget and have the credit score higher so that they can rent a place or get a car or something like that. Also, making sure that they follow through with their POs. And we have a lot of one-on-one meetings. And so because of the past experience, they can also sense or understand when something is not quite right, so they can catch it beforehand before it get into more trouble. So this way they become their friends, become their mentors, and so that they can have a growth period. Next. So a lot of times the credit is really important, because when they have incarcerations or when they have bad history of renting before or eviction notice, renter doesn't want to rent them sometimes because of the felonies also, and they have lack of down payment, poor credit, no support. So our budget is, if they stay with us, which is free to begin with, so if they go to work, we require them to save 80% of the income, and 20% of the income they can spend, but 80%, because in real life, your basic needs will take up to 80% of your income, your rent, your car payment, your insurance, and things like that. So this will give them the practice how to save money. So when they transition out, so they will have the money saved so that they're not stressing how to pay rent, how to get credit, so they can move on in more like a seamless, smooth transitions. And we were very thankful and proud of this because actually we have recently, in the last couple of weeks, we actually had one client bought their own home after they stayed with us for 4 years. And he bought a over $250,000 home for him and his family, which is a big achievement from somebody that was incarcerated and have substance use challenge. So we have at least 5 former clients that actually purchased their own home. One, I think, just graduated from our program and purchased a home in Topeka. And so we're really, really proud of them. Next, Jeff. And I also want to mention one other thing, that another couple of what I mean by thriving and surviving is different. We have one young person who was going to KU. He became homeless in Kansas City. We find him in Kansas City on the street. So we make sure we encourage him to go back to school because he was at KU to begin with studying engineering. After 2 years of working with him, he graduated from his engineering school, and then now he works with Burns McDonnell, and he's totally staying sober and get his own life back. So those are really important things. Of course, this is probably nothing new to you all. So these are some of the numbers. In Johnson County, we spend like roughly $191 a day to house an inmate. In Douglas County, I think roughly the inmates are, let me look, $156 a day. So it does cost us, the community. Sometimes people say, well, they incarcerated, what does that got to do with us? But our taxpayers' money do help pay for this incarceration days. And so, and these, we got it from the studies from one of the published place. So Jeff, can you go to the next page slide? So in our housing program, our average stay in the house is $62 in 2019. So, which is less than half of what we house an inmate, but the difference is, but we help them, guide them through the system, guide them through back in life so that they can have the opportunity to grow. And in 2019, our house in Kansas City, we housed 87 people. Our cost per person was $45 a day, which is like 1/3 of the cost of jail. So we are trying to model that by the time we move them to the next step phase, like the Meraki or Finnegan Place, that becomes $25 a day because now they contribute, even though we provide all the other services for free, but then now they contribute to their stay. So that really kind of like in the long run, not only do they grow, but we also can help the county and the state save money because the cost of a daily stay is like 1/2 to 1/3 of the costs. So our goal is not just the money part, but our goal is really to make sure that these people have the opportunity to thrive and excel in life. Jeff, can you get the next slide? Okay, so those are some of the graphs that we've shown for the people that stay in Kairos. So the how long do they stay? The average stay is 72 days. And so, but because sometimes Lawrence has a little bit of limitations because, and so sometimes when we did this and when they do really well in Cairo, we don't have the next phase to move them forward to. So this year, so we decided because the challenge that we face, the limitation of the space, so we opened our second house in Lawrence, which is Meraki, to help release that feeling of being stuck because they can't move on and things. And now that they can move to the next second phase with more of an independent living. Jeff? Okay, I think that's about the overall. I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to leave some time if anybody has any question to ask. So. Does anybody have any questions that you want to ask me?
First of all, maybe Carwood, it would help if we could stop sharing the screen so we could kind of see each other's faces. And I think there was a question, some questions in the chat. Did those all get answered?
Okay.
This is Lisa Larson. I had a question about your jail costs for Douglas County. Were those numbers per year? Were they multi-year numbers?
I think they're multi-year numbers, so that they did an average. We went and looked at the study. On my slide, we tell you which study we got it from. So
Go ahead, Jay.
You waiting on me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Lisa, and I responded in the chats. And that 156, while it sounds like a high number, is actually incredibly low because it's just the nuts and bolts costs of housing a human being for one day, and it doesn't account for salaries, benefits paid, insurance, as well as other times that are spent. So 156 sounds like a big number, but it's actually much more than that. So and I'm going to go ahead and throw this plug out here while I have a second, in that I have had the opportunity to go through the house and visit with Carwu and Aaron and those guys. And it was incredibly enlightening. And I'm a huge fan of peer support stuff, because I want people who have chewed the same dirt that I've chewed. And these guys they're in it to win it. And they present a perspective to these kids coming in, or these young folks coming in, that none of us could ever have. No schooling could ever teach you what these guys have, and they bring to these folks. And it was incredibly empowering to see Carwu and his group do what they do, because they're doing the really good hard work. So I just wanted to throw that out there too while I had a second. So
I wanted to add as well, this is Carrie Nice with the Reentry Department over here at the Sheriff's Office. Carwu is one of our main sources of referrals for people leaving jail, going into homelessness. So we make referrals to Carwu. He comes over and screens the individuals in the jail, and then we are able to set up a release plan for them. He literally waits in his van in the front of the jail, or he will be in the front lobby waiting to pick those individuals up, or his staff, which is a huge connection. And then we continue to work with them, but Reentry kind of takes the back seat. Because Carwu does provide those full wraparound services, instead of duplicating services, we just provide support from there. I don't have the exact number of how many we have referred, but I know Carwu is out here at the jail screening people regularly. We see him multiple times a week. I would guess in upwards of, probably for this year, just a complete guess, we would have referred over 60 individuals to him. We were initially his primary referral source, and I know he's opened that up to the community, and I think probation as well. So just that as well, Carwu has been a great partner to Reentry. We are very thankful for him, and he has done many great things for the people that are leaving our jail.
This is Shay Downing. I have a question for you, Carwu. For the most part, the referrals have been coming through the jail. Is there something that defense counsel can do to make this a more streamlined or an easier approach for you? Is there something we can do to help?
So far, I think the jail referral is pretty smooth because literally we just go in there and watch. The probation and parole do refer some people. For some reason, the state of Kansas heard about our program. So now other jails from anywhere from Leavenworth to Norton are calling me. so it's definitely a learning experience, but we are very thankful. I think our reentry team and us work really smoothly together. And sometimes the hospital will call us as well if it's appropriate, that we can see whether we can work with them or not. So because hospitals sometimes it may be a little bit different because they may be needing more physical help versus what we address. So, but so far, I think the referral has been really good.
Mario, you have a question?
Yes. So my question was about the sustainability practices of this. One second. You're okay. So from what I read, and just correct me if I'm wrong, so the housing program, most of your clients will stay housed in that location for about 72 days. What happens after that? What are the sustainability practices of keeping those individuals housed? What are the challenges of that, specifically in Lawrence? Coming as somebody who works deeply with the homeless population and is really interested to kind of hear about this and making sure that those folks, once they are past that typical stay, if they're continuing to be housed, and who you partner with in those spaces.
Okay, on those incidents, what we normally try to do is find the next phase. That's how we send them to an Oxford house or transitional house. Some of them, because of the probation issue, they have to stay in Kansas. Some of them can move to Missouri. So it's kind of case by case. That's why I said this year, because the frustration of the kind of like they kind of get stuck because they don't have the next house to move to. So that's why we decided to go ahead and open our second house. So now that they can have a second phase to go to, we don't want to move them to the street. We don't want to move them to nowhere. We want to make sure that by the time they move out of our house, there's always some place to go to. Unless they decide to walk off, then we have no say in it. Then that's why the second house was so important, because that way we can open up more space, we can bring in more people, but yet the people that is doing well have the next step to move forward to.
Okay, and how many do you support in each of those houses? What is the capacity?
I think we have 10 in the first phase. We have 10 in the second phase also.
Thank you.
Great. Carrie, you have a question?
No, I was just going to add, Mariel, that is, I think we're set to meet in like November, but that is something we're discussing as well. Some of those reentry vouchers that we have through the Housing Authority would be very appropriate for some of these individuals. So we've been kind of reviewing what that looks like. We've been working with you guys, but that's kind of the next step that we hope to kind of put that piece together.
That's really good to hear. Thank you so much. And I look forward to that meeting.
Sarah?
Yeah, thanks. And I want to piggyback on this conversation too about supportive housing and transitional housing. And I think, Carwu did a great job of answering that question. And I know Bob Transky's on this call as well to talk about, there is such a significant need in our community for this work. And I just appreciate Mariel bringing it up and highlighting it for everyone paying attention, that, we have bottlenecks in this system and we need to work really hard to try to streamline those. So I'd invite anybody who knows more about that topic than I do to chime in.
Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm one of the managers with Artists Helping the Homeless. And I didn't want one of the, sorry, we have both of them close, but I didn't want one of the questions to get buried in the comments. Somebody asked in regards to our budgeting system, how we allocate things like fines, restitutions, child support and things like that. And I just wanted to make sure that that got brought to light. When we do our 80-20% split, as with most everything at AHH, we approach it at a case-by-case basis. So if somebody needs to pay things like child support or fines or even their cell phone, or a lot of times guys will get jobs in like the field of mechanics and need to buy tools in order to get to work. Those things all come out of the 100% of the check. And then once the live priority is taken care of, then we split 80-20 after that. So I just wanted to clarify that point and make sure that question got brought to light. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's very helpful. Jill?
I just wanted to kind of a variation of what Sarah was alluding to about what Artists Helping the Homeless is providing is they are filling a gap in the community as it relates to supportive housing. As Carrie talked about, like this is such a resource to our reentry department because quite frankly, they didn't have any other resources before we had Artists Helping the Homeless. There was a lot of hustling and creative problem solving to try to get folks off to a recovery-oriented next step once they were released. And Artists Helping the Homeless has just been an outstanding resource, and we need to continue to think intentionally about our justice-involved community members. And we haven't talked about even, you know, Artists Helping the Homeless isn't currently serving females, so that we need to think about that as well. I know it's something that, you know, we would love to be able to serve everybody. And he does do a lot of those connections as well when he can do it with the right partners and works closely with our friends at DECA. But thinking really intentionally about who we're housing and how we're housing. I think this is definitely a part of our community that often gets left behind when Artists Helping the Homeless just tried to open up the 2 houses that they have open currently. They faced a lot of resistance and a lot of hesitation on the part of this community. And I think that's the part that we really need as many partners as possible that are understanding just how important it is to help these folks integrate back into the community and make them feel welcome in all parts of the community. And it's been a challenge, but so far so good. And the 2 houses, Kairos and Meraki, are great neighbors and I have been so far so good, great parts of the community.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Lisa?
Yeah, Carwo, I might have missed this in your talk. What's the capacity of your houses and how many have gone through the program?
I think each house up 10 people. So the Cairo house, my co-worker actually lived right next door. It's a duplex. So that's why they're all 24-hour monitors. So in case they have any questions, they don't even have to go too far because my help actually lived next door. And so we designed that on purpose. So the support is there 24 hours. I don't have the exact number. I think we have it in the slide. I think Aaron, do you have the number?
Yeah, we have done we have intake and discharge 75, and that is not including the 8 we currently have in the house. And then over at Meraki, we have 5 currently at the house.
Thank you very much. Really impressive work. Thank you. Thank you.
And that's not including staff member with Meraki. So.
Great. Thank you. Bob?
Just wanted to piggyback on what Sarah said and what Jill has said. I think one of the great things about this project and working with this organization is not only that they're filling an immediate gap, but I think they are allowing the community to have some opportunity to learn about additional models and additional models that we should build if we want to continue to expand our portfolio of supportive housing opportunities. And to that end, one of the things the county is doing is sponsoring a comprehensive supportive housing needs assessment. There will be opportunities coming to Douglas County in the form of ARPA dollars And what we really want to be able to do is to be intentional, strategic, and smart about how we think about the whole continuum of supportive housing needs. So yes, there are supportive housing needs directly related to reentry, but we need to know how many transitional units would be ideal in Douglas County, how many permanent supportive housing opportunities, how many opportunities serve people who have substance use and addiction issues, how many units should be supporting people with serious mental illness. And so that's what that piece of work is designed to do. We have a supportive housing work group that's going to be stood up between the affordable housing group of the CHIP and the behavioral health plank of the CHIP. And so there's a lot of work trying to elevate and develop better awareness about what our system needs are. You know, Jill has been really instrumental, along with Bert Nash and all the partners we work with and serve, of going through the Built for Zero process to help us identify what is the scope of our of the individuals who experience chronic homelessness, and how do we address that need kind of in a systemic, in a smart, I'm just going to use the word smart. How do we get smart about doing this? And smart means be data informed. Smart means have all of our partners collaborating, and smart means figuring out what our priorities need to be. You know, I think Carwu and Artists Helping the Homeless showed us that we need more than a Kairos type of model. He needs a next step piece, and you know, and that's Oxford-like, but it's not exactly an Oxford House model. So there's a lot of learning to be done in the next couple of months, and really in the years ahead. And a lot of the people on this call are doing this work. In addition to, you know, oh, by the way, remember, we have added a transitional housing home on the campus that serves 12 people. We have 10 permanent supportive housing units. So if you add it up, between 3 years ago and now, there's probably about 45 beds devoted to supportive housing that weren't here in the community, and we have a lot of work to go ahead of us.
Thanks, Bob. Do we have any more questions or comments from the council?
And I'm gonna be this is Sarah. I'm just gonna, my logic admin person. So if you have questions, we really shouldn't put them in the chat because of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. So if there was a question put in the chat that I will read from Patrick, Bob, if you could answer, or Patrick, you've come on there. If you could answer that, I'm just gonna also just encourage us. We really can't have questions in the chat. Just raise your hand and we'll get them answered. Thank you.
I'll actually let Bob answer it.
And I'm not sure I'm the greatest expert on Oxford houses, but Oxford houses are sober living houses where people live cooperatively, where they pay rent as they get their feet back on the ground. An example of how an Oxford house serves someone: we have someone who was working as a peer support specialist. They started in the emergency room. They coded while they were in the emergency room. They connected with opportunities to detox. They connected with care coordination, but their wife and family were not ready to accept them back into their home. So Oxford House provides this transitional opportunity to build capacity, to maintain sobriety until you are ready to transition into the community. Again, it's one type of model. Meraki is another kind of sort of like that model, and we need a sort of a spectrum and a tapestry of these opportunities.
Mariel.
Thank you. Maria Perredo. So I don't know if it's a question, it's more of a statement, is if there is intention to communicate the idea of having more scattered site properties for the after the transitional supportive housing. That's where my mind immediately goes. Are we talking to property owners? Are we talking to management companies? Is that something that is in the step of process? Because I just keep thinking of the sustainability of those who are being released from these programs, and making sure that that's in the community conversation as well, as that we can't support at the end of this particular housing, that there's got to be more of a community focused. And I am a firm believer in scattered site housing. And so I just kind of wanted to either put that in brain, if that's not conversation, if we're communicating with area property owners who provide rentals, or what the conversation would look like if that was added in.
Marielle, this is Jill, and we've had some really good conversations with the organization that facilitates and coordinates the network of Oxford houses in throughout most of Kansas. They're called Friends of Recovery. And when we first met with them, when Mike Brower, Bob, and I met with them, I think it was last year, trying to, how do we be better? How can Douglas County be better partners to help you expand the network of Oxford houses? They, exactly what you said is help us get more property owners to either rent or to make if just the cost of housing in Lawrence alone is a barrier. But even if there were homes that they could have as rentals on behalf of their organization, Friends of Recovery, that would be a big boost to them as well. For comparators, I think we have, Carrie probably knows this, or Wu and his team know this, but we have, I think, maybe 6 Oxford houses in Douglas County, compared to, I think Topeka, Shawnee County have something like 19 or 20. Johnson County has a whole lot. So we need to do better, and it's absolutely on the radar screen of all of us, and absolutely scattered sight.
Great.
And Friends of Recovery say we should have 12 Oxford houses in Douglas County. That's what they estimate this community should and could accommodate.
Yeah, that would be a conversation I'm also having for landlords, because one of the biggest barriers, of course, that we all noted to renting a property is felony history. And so I think that's a really good conversation. I'm glad that's being had, and very interested if you need any partnership or conversation on that to be involved. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, the city of Lawrence has been a really great partner in helping us broker the agreements that we needed to have in place from a land use perspective on, even though Artists Helping the Homeless isn't a licensed facility, it does need to be because it's considered a limited group home under the city code. I have had nothing but great experiences with the previous planning director and then legal staff in understanding what is Carwood doing, how is he, how can we do it safely underneath the land use code, and do it in a way that is being a good neighbor as well. So there are some restrictions on who can and can't be there, and that does at times limit who reentry can and can't refer. But these are all individuals that have been released from, whether it's jail or a detox or a state facility, they have been released, but they do have to meet a set of criteria that, again, City of Lawrence has been great in working with us on that. So I want to make sure I gave them a shout out. And you can share those, how we've structured those agreements with landlords if it makes sense in the future, Marielle.
I did want to hit back on the housing situation, and I think that Bob did a great job of describing Oxford. I actually lived in one at one point in time, and yeah, I mean, the best way to describe one of those is like, it's a lot like what our Meraki house would be like, except for without AHH, is kind of the way I put it. It is an independently governed house, but it also has the overarching government of Oxford. To where there are regionals, there's national levels of things in case houses get out of control. But on that note, I did want to bring some personal experience to light. I had very poor credit score. I had a broken lease on my record. And now over a year ago, I approached Mr. Wu and I was like, hey, do you think it's about time that I look towards independent housing and get an apartment? And I don't know if you think I was ready. And he was like, well, put this and this together, put a faux budget together, see what it would look like, and then we'll talk about it. But the point I'm getting at is they were willing to accept my rent payment history through AHH as a form of renter's history. So even though my credit score wasn't great, I had a broken lease on my history, I was able to build that through AHH, and they were like, we can take this, but we'll need to talk to Mr. Wu. He came over and he talked to the directors at where I now rent an apartment, and I was able to get into the apartment. So there are ways like that. I don't personally have any felonies, so that does work in my favor when it comes to apartment complexes. but like I was able to use my renting history through AHH to help me get an independent apartment.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to touch on, and someone was talking about getting some sort of relationship with like landlords. And that's something I'm going through right now. You know, I came here out of prison. I've been sober almost 3 years. I have an apartment that, you know, I moved in with my fiance, but we're trying to find places, and there's nowhere on the application that I can explain, look, I've been sober for 3 years. I've been working for 2.5 years. I'm doing all this. As soon as they see my felony, it's over. There's no explanation. There's no nothing. We've had a couple clients who have been doing all the right things and were ready to move on, had the money to do it. But as soon as they saw felony, it was over. There's not even an option to do anything. So that is one place like where if there could be, Lawrence, just as far as apartments or rentals, it's just not felon friendly. And so if there could be some relationship with landlords, that would be a huge, huge help to anyone, to myself and to a lot of our clients, because, you know, I mean, I do have a past, but I'm working past it. And a lot of people will not take the time to recognize that.
Thank you for sharing. That's really helpful perspective. Darren, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I did. I can hold that. I know we may need to move an agenda, but I can do either.
Go ahead.
So this, and I don't know if this is a question directly for Jill. It's in relationship to something that you said, Bob, that you responded to, and Carr, maybe you can respond. Sorry. Oh, Darren Kennedy, community member. I'm thinking, Jill, about your point that you said that originally there was resistance within the community, and some of those barriers might have been some of the things that you've already talked about. But thinking about Bob's point about clearly there's going to be more study and hopefully more facilities and more resources, I'm wondering, you know, as a community member, what are some of the things that discussions that we had to remove some of those barriers? It sounded like perhaps you were referring to maybe like some sort of NIMBY attitude towards facilities like I don't know if that is what it is. Just wondering if that's what you're referring to. If anyone has thoughts about how maybe even CJCC can move the needle on some of that, because it sounds like that is an important barrier here. If I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate that comment, Darren. And I think there's a couple conversations that have been going on. You know, how do we have the county administrator and some other folks, even with the city and some community partners have been having, like, how do we have a meaningful conversation at a community level about the racism and discrimination that exists at a community level? And how do we have an open and honest conversation about it, so that we can have some shared understandings and agreements around who are the members of our community and how can we all be better neighbors? That's a separate issue. But also in terms of the NIMBYism is everywhere. But, you know, if there's one way that a community can be proactive, some of the models that I've looked at, and I've talked to Leah Roslin with the City of Lawrence's affordable housing program. There's an initiative and a campaign across communities that is YIMBY. So yes, in my backyard campaigns. And if there was a coalition that wanted to join that campaign, I don't think it could just be the city, the county. It would need to be a coalition of folks that absolutely the city and the county, I'm sure we'd all be on board. And but it's got to be some sort of a community strategy that is going to get folks at the table and make this something that's a point of pride for the community.
And I personally have decided that I'm willing to put my name on Carwu and his organization if they need, because I know that their neighborhood had trouble with that coming in, and I think we can use what they've already done on top of the fact that they have so many references within the community. And I would gladly welcome one into my neighborhood, absolutely. And so but I think that we as community members and maybe people who have a different platform should be using that. And it's a great point, Darren, that we should be using that to let the rest of the community know you do want this, because it's just like, you know, no Tyson and Tongi. Yeah, they didn't want to stop eating Tyson chicken. They just didn't want the processing plant in their backyard. Everybody agrees we need more Carwus and more Kairos houses, but everybody says, well, I don't want them in my backyard. And I think that that's up to us as as their personal references to get out there. So Carwoo, I'm telling you right now, if you need help with that, just let me know. I'll go to a neighborhood meeting for you.
Thank you.
Suzanne?
So relatedly on the felony issue and housing, we offer expungements. The law offers expungements to those who have completed their sentence. And so please get a hold of our office if you're interested in expunging your records. I know the felony issue is very difficult for those who are trying to get housing in Lawrence. And we got to figure out a way to sort of bridge the gap between the completion of the sentence to the expungement, and then doing maybe something else, whatever that is. And I'm not quite sure what that is at this point, but letting the community know and landlords know that the individual has completed their sentence. They're doing everything they can to be contributors to society, and all of those things. So those are things that are sort of going through our minds here in the DA's office, but expungements is a great way for those felony convictions, whether it's a diversion or completion of a sentence, to have that removed from your record, because it makes a huge difference when you go forward to try to get housing, especially affordable housing. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Maria?
One more thing and we can move on. I'm sorry. DA Valdez, I would really be interested in talking with you about that. And also say, from taking off my community hat, putting on my hat for housing authority and as a landlord liaison, this is my entire job, is to begin changing the narrative of how practices have been in accepting applications for tenants and what that process looks like, and really destigmatizing and looking at it and saying a lot of these, what we consider blanketed screening practices, are actually incredibly harmful. And so there is a lot of conversation with myself, with the Housing Stabilization Collaborative, with a lot of social service providers as to how we start destigmatizing, how we start taking away those barriers. And it's really addressing the screening criteria, especially with things like credit score, things like felonies, things like past evictions. Knowing that there is an opportunity for expungement. I will tell you, so many people with felonies do not know that that's an availability, and they also don't know how to access that in a way that's going to be supportive to them, because it isn't accessible. Just hearing it for the first time right now and so I think those are the steps we need to take. There needs to be, like Darren said, a community conversation, and that is my hope in this position, is to start destigmatizing the people who are our neighbors, the people who are tenants, and making sure that everyone has access to safe and sustainable housing. So there is an effort. I love this conversation, because I think it plays into so many of housing conversations that have been happening. And I look forward to hearing more.
Yes, Carol.
Yeah, I want to add one thing. I don't know, I think most of you probably know Rebecca Buford from the Tenants to Homeowner. So she is going to get another building that can house up to 15 people or something like that. And so I thought, and she has a lot of houses. She says she has like quite a bit of houses. So I just had a 1 hour meeting with her. So maybe we can look into with her a little bit more and see what she can or cannot do, because I keep emphasizing to her, we are having challenge with the winter's homelessness. And so if anybody have feedback for me how to work with her better, so maybe I will try to like connect with her a little bit better to learn how to make this winter work a little bit better. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, I can definitely help you with that. That is something with their ARM program that they're trying to get properties, and there's another one that they're potentially looking at. So there's a more opportunity for rehabilitating some vacant properties and getting them to be sustainable, affordable housing. So I can put that bug in her ear to keep talking to you.
Yeah, because I just went and looked at a couple property with her and see like what we can or cannot do together. So just bring that up, okay?
Yeah.
Any more questions and comments? This has been great discussion, Karwu. We can't thank you enough for the presentation and your AHH staff presentation today. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us. We appreciate everybody's support.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is regarding My Resource Connection and High Utilizers with Bob Tryansky and Dr. Matt Cravens.
Thanks, Pam, and good afternoon again, everybody. We want to do kind of a bringing the council up to date on something that's been going on for a long time in terms of the work of our partners. But I'm not sure that everybody on this call is really aware of this tool. So when I was on this panel as a community member, I was in one of Mariel's seats on this council in 2017. One of the first actions that this group took, actually made a recommendation, was to bring online a tool in Douglas County called My Resource Connection. That tool is something that was developed in Johnson County and developed to provide case managers who are linked with individuals who have complex mental health challenges, addiction issues, contact with the criminal justice system, individuals who are really struggling and cycling in the community, to give their case managers the opportunity to see where the people they're working with are touching the system or where we have clients in common. There are two, and Jill, jump in if I don't explain this optimally, but there are two pieces to My Resource Connection. One is a website that's public facing that tries to consolidate all of the resources that are available in a community so that clients, individuals in the community, case managers, professionals, everybody in the community has kind of a common place where they can see the resources that are available to deal with issues like housing, with homelessness, all the things we're trying to address both on this council and with the Behavioral Health Leadership Coalition, city, county government, all the issues we're trying to work on here. The county agreed to bring this online. And I remember at the time we talked about how quickly we'll be able to bring this online, probably in the next 3 to 6 months. And here we are, and it's 2021. But there's been tremendous work that's been done. And I think we're finally at a point where with a tool like My Resource Connect and some of the work that's been done by the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, under the leadership of Matt Cravens and Mike Brower, Robert Benicki before them, and in the behavioral health space with the Behavioral Health Leadership Coalition, we have tried to look and build on kind of the outstanding work that's been done in the criminal justice space and to catch up so that we really have an understanding of Douglas County specific data related to each of these intercepts in the sequential intercept model that we work through the Stepping Up initiative, right? And so what we want to do today is just give you an overview of what we're doing with data in the behavioral health space and how it relates to the work we're doing in the criminal justice space. So in 2018, as the Behavioral Health Leadership Coalition started to come together, and we have people on here, always remember that Patrick Schmitz from Burt Nash, Lori Alvarado from DECA, myself, we all Sarah Plinsky participate in that coalition, so we can always be a bridge in terms of communicating and sharing and updating this group. We, as part of our work, formed a data sharing collaborative. And that collaborative involves all 8 agencies in the Behavioral Health Leadership Coalition, convened by public health. And what that collaborative does is to ask, how can we share data, navigate privacy challenges presented by HIPAA and 42 CFR, and start to synthesize what we know individually so that we can collectively be, again, more strategic, more intentional, and smart. So a subset of those partners started uploading their data into MyRC so that case managers and people who touch individual clients at the level of privacy, what's appropriate in terms of HIPAA and 42 CFR can peer into the whole system and see where a person is touching the jail. How many runs has a person encountered with 911 and EMS? Are they connected with services at Burt Nash, at DECA? And another part of this has been to try to figure out if we can get better and clearer about understanding those individuals who cycle through multiple pieces of our system unnecessarily, right? And we have all kinds of terms that we use for these individuals. Some of them are quite crass, right? So you've heard the term frequent flyer. You've heard the term familiar face. Yeah, we use the term high utilizers. But what we're really talking about here is we're talking about people who have complex healthcare and system challenges. And in many times, it's not that they're treatment resistant or system resistant, they've been system failed, right? And so how do we get better at pinpointing those individuals, trying to find out if there are ways to wrap more service around them, prioritize services around them, so that we can reduce these types of high utilization of unnecessary services? So the building behind me, the rendering the building behind me, this is a tool that we hope will be really helpful at having a more appropriate door, right, for individuals so that they don't go to the jail and they don't go to the emergency department. A treatment and recovery center will be the best door you could walk through, and we want to get better at meeting people in the community. But I'm going to turn this over to Matthew Cravens. Jill, did I do an okay job of sort of explaining MyRC? Do you want to jump in here?
Nope, you did good.
Okay, thanks. I always feel better when Jill says I did okay. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Cravens because in the Data Sharing Collaborative, we've started to surface some better understanding about how high utilizers, complex care, high risk individuals touch our system. And just to give you an example, one piece of this, like in 2017, 122 people had 4 or more visits at the LMH emergency department. So that means 122 people were responsible for 750 visits. That's like 5% of all the behavioral health visits in the emergency room in a given year. So Matthew, I'm going to turn this over to you so you can show us and share with us sort of some higher level things of what we know about and the challenges we face with high utilizers.
Thanks, Bob. So one of the first things that we were able to do with MyRC data is to rank people in Douglas County according to their service utilization. Our goal is to identify high utilizers. As Bob said, there's a lot of different names for these folks, but people using a lot of costly services. And then we want to problem solve to help these people with their needs. And our plan eventually is to have the integrated crisis team work with the individuals on this list. But I want to first just start off by showing you what the front end of MyRC looks like. As Bob said, MyRC has 2 functions. The first is an impressive database of services providers like food pantries, mental health care providers, rental assistance organizations, everything that caseworkers can help connect their clients to. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is the front end of MyRC, and there's the services tab. What I did, selected food and food pantries, and you get a whole list of them right here in Johnson and Douglas County. Here's Just Food. You can click on it, and it's taking a little bit of time to load here. But you get the idea. You'll be able to see what information, contact information is there for Just Food, for Jubilee Cafe, for other places, and then caseworkers can set up their clients with them. So that's sort of the first function of MyRC. And the second is it contains data on all the services that people in the county use from about 14 sources, including LMH emergency department visits, jail bookings, ambulance rides, Burt Nash visits, public health department clinic services, and more. And all the data is merged by person so that MyRC lists each person's full list of services. And I should say Steve Yoder with Johnson County runs the MyRC data and software infrastructure and developed the algorithm that uses this data to rank people as high utilizers. I helped apply the algorithm to Douglas County data, but Steve is immensely knowledgeable and will be on hand to answer any questions if people have them later. So one thing I'll say about this algorithm is it weights certain services like emergency department visits and jail stays more than public health department services and Burt Nash visits. Longer stays are weighted more than shorter stays. And the ranking only considers services in MyRC data that I have access to, For instance, I don't have access to the DECA substance abuse service data, which are at a higher level of privacy. So I'm just going to show you a few of the top utilizers that this ranking sort of, produced for us. All right. So here's one individual. And what it does is it lists the department or the division over here. This is LDC FM, which is fire medical, which is ambulance visits. We have clinic services. This actually isn't loading, but what I can just do is share the list of services for this person. Hold on. All right. So what I did is I just sort of inputted into PowerPoint this person's information. So this person had 21 LMH emergency department visits from August 20th, 2020 to June 2021, 6 ambulance rides to LMH for overdose, drug ingestion, psychiatric episodes, skin infection, abrasion, 8 jail bookings. Most of these offenses appear to be low or mid-level offenses, perhaps with the exception of burglary. One of the FTAs on this list is the burglary case. The other FTAs are generally on municipal court cases, which are often misdemeanors or infractions. Pretrial release supervision, probation, 3 Burton treatment plans or appointments, and 2 public health department services. So this person clearly is not getting the help he or she needs. They're slipping through the cracks of the support system in a way that makes this person kind of come back to the system and to these high cost services pretty frequently, and apparently will need better sources of healthcare or health insurance coverage, or perhaps drug treatment, among other needs. So here's the second person on the list that the data algorithm put up for us. 1 LMH ED visit, 7 ambulance rides for psychiatric episodes, drug ingestion, abdominal pain, other condition, 17 jail bookings. Let's see, most of these are mid or low level offenses with the exception of aggravated battery. We have a pretrial release supervision twice, once with electronic monitoring, 3 Burton treatment plans and appointments, and 2 public health department clinic services. So, the list goes on and on and on. And, even when you get to about 100, you're seeing people who really are using a lot of costly services. And these are folks who need some help. Person number 5 has 73 LMH ED visits from September 20th to 2020 to June 2021. So these are folks who need some help. The next few months, what we plan to do is get the integrated crisis team together to begin helping some of these individuals. For those who don't know, the ICT is a dedicated multi-agency team embedded in the emergency department at LMH. They embrace the integrated behavioral health primary care model that meets patients where they are and provide immediate behavioral health intervention, consultation, and treatment to ensure better outcomes. This ICT stakeholders include Burton Ash, DECA, Heartland RADAC, the Kansas Suicide Prevention Headquarters, the shelter, and Willow. So I wanted to give you one other sense of what the data can provide us with information-wise. So we can also use MyRC data to determine how much overlap there is in types of services that people use. So do people who have jail stays also tend to use the LMH ED emergency department? What percentage of Burton clients also use the emergency department? So we're able to answer these types of questions because the data for many types of services and local organizations are combined into one place, into MyRC. And we really wouldn't be able to do this if we had sort of 2 separate sources of data, like jail bookings over here and ED visits over here that couldn't be linked, but we can link them. So these results that you're about to see build on Steve Yoder's code. Many thanks to Steve. And what this table shows, it's a little bit confusing, but we get the line here for Burton adult services. And what it shows is of people with Burton Center adult services, 40% had an LMH ED visit in that period. So that's what that 40 is over here. Of people with the Douglas County jail stay in the past year, 31% had an LMH ED visit. of people with an LMH ED visit in the last year, 21% had a fire medical ambulance ride. Of people with LDC public health clinic services in the past year, 50% had an LMH ED visit. So we really are seeing a lot of overlap in this. I highlighted any cell with over 25%. And what we see in this LMH ED column is that there is a lot of overlap between people who are criminal justice involved or using health services and the ED. So I think one thing we can say is that the findings do highlight the need to get Burt Nash clients and criminal justice involved individuals improved sources of healthcare and insurance coverage. And I think there's just a lot more we can do with this data. So, I recently got super user status to allow some research into some of these questions, and I'm getting Steve's help to do more of that. And this really shows that we have plenty of work in front of us, but this gives us a flavor of what MyRC data can sort of allow us to do. So we're open for any questions, or Bob, if you have anything you want to add to it, you certainly can.
I just want to add one thing as we move into discussion a little bit, and that is that sometimes these types of numbers can seem overwhelming, and there's such intensity and urgency when people are experiencing these conditions that it feels sometimes like you can't make enough progress quick enough. And that's all true. But there's a number that I've been paying attention to that kind of infiltrates all of this work we've been doing. And the number is between 125 and 150, right? So we send about 120 people to Osawatomie from Douglas County every year. We have, like I said, 122 people who had 4 or more ED visits for 747 visits overall. If you look at the Built for Zero real-time by name list of people experiencing chronic homelessness, it's about 150 people. There are 123 people under the age of 19 who were in the ED last year for a suicide attempt. So this number of about 120 to 150 people, it just seems to be a number that we hover around. And I am curious to know, that's not a lot of people. For each of those individuals, the things they're experiencing are intense and really difficult. But in terms of our ability to harness this information from data and make a difference with people might not be as daunting as we think it is. It's always going to be hard, but it's very, very doable to sort of move the needle here, right? This is not Phoenix, Arizona with 5 million people that we're trying to impact 120 people. And I just did the math on housing units that we added, since 3 years ago. The number is 62 housing beds, not permanent support, but supportive housing beds overall, and vouchers. 62 people are now being served better than they were 3 years ago. So, I just think what we can do if we really zero in on this data and say, how do we prioritize these individuals? Because the challenges they face are complicated, but not impossible to solve. That's all.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions of Matt or Bob?
This is Sarah. I'm sorry. As I say, I should have raised my hand since I was the person who made everyone raise their hand. I really do appreciate, I'm really glad Steve Yoder was a part of this conversation today. Steve really is the engine behind how this has all come together. I had the privilege of working with Steve when I worked at Johnson County, and this is really cutting edge stuff, folks. To be able to pull data together and look at it from a macro perspective like that, with also a front-facing tool that is helpful for case managers. It runs off GIS and 211 data, and it is truly groundbreaking, the kind of stuff we're doing here and able to track data from this perspective. So I know it can sound really complex, but I think this is really a tool to help us solve a lot of different problems facing our community over the next couple of years. So I want to be able to publicly thank Steve and Johnson County for letting letting us use this system and being a part of that process, and just invite anyone, if you have any questions about how this works on the front end. So like, how do we tell the community about the resources that are out there? And also on the back end on what kind of data that we can aggregate. Like this is a great opportunity to dig a little deeper. Thank you.
Teacher McCabe.
Who has access to the My Resource data?
Bob, I think you're.
Bob, you're muted.
Sorry, thanks. So I'm the person today who gets to be unmute on the meeting. It depends. Everyone in the community has access to the front part of the platform. And then in terms of who has access to the back end, it's all dependent upon HIPAA and privacy and what your job is. So if you're a case manager or a probation officer, you have one level sort of security and access that's tailored to what you do. Matthew has super utilizer status, so he can look at the whole thing sort of systemically. If you're a DECA case worker, you can look down in the system, but if you're a Bert Nash person, you can't look up beyond when you get to that 42 CFR. So it's very sophisticated in how it lets you in and what it lets you see. Did that answer the question?
It does. And I guess I'm curious to what extent probation officers are currently accessing it, if you know.
Jill can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, the court services, criminal justice services, probation officers are some of the highest utilizers of it. And I think, they do have limited access in the business associate partition that they sit in, but I think that they appreciate seeing, they utilize as a resource tool to connect clients to success, and do some problem solving in terms of housing, food, job supports, things like that. It's got a lot of it's got a lot of capacity in that regard, but I also think that they appreciate seeing when their client has an interaction with the another partner in the criminal justice system. So if they got booked into our jail, they got booked into the Johnson County jail, the goal is for them to, as their case manager, their probation officer, say, hey, sounds like it's a good time for me to check in with my client, and figure out how do I get them on the path to success, hopefully.
And how long has this been a resource for them?
They were one of our initial partners. So, well, district courts maybe was technically year 2. It just took a little, but I think at least 3 years now. And I get daily reports in terms of who's using it and how much. And criminal justice services is, and all I see is their email address. So I don't know whose staff is whose, but they're some of the best users. And they're usually the first ones to say, hey, we have a new staff member. We need to get them signed up for user status.
I've heard it mentioned briefly. This is the first time I've gotten a look at what's available, and I have to believe it's a tremendous tool. So thank you for presenting on it.
Yeah, I would just say, that those folks would love to be able to, there is a mechanism that if a client was willing to share with if they had a case manager at Bert Nash, or if they had a case manager at another agency, and they wanted to allow their probation officer or their court services officer to have a higher level of access, we can accommodate that. It hasn't happened yet, but if it ever comes up, we have a way of accommodating it. But right now it's hard to be able to provide as much actionable information to those folks as we'd really like to.
Yeah, no, there's all sorts of issues that have to be balanced there, but it sounds like it's a great approach. Thank you.
Darren.
Hi, Darren Kennedy again. Matt, this might be a question for you more. I'm tracking through the last few months and wondering the dashboards that, and maybe the sheriff might also be part of this question. Some of the dashboards that we've been talking about and some of the questions that have come up and sort of the dashboards that are tracking sort of like racial outcomes and touch points with the criminal justice system seem to have some overlap here. Is the resource connection at all pulling from similar information? Are those pieces talking to each other? Because it does seem like we're coming to a place where people are trying to make some programming and structural decisions that pull some of that pull from some of those same information needs. So I didn't know if that is happening. So, and again, it's sort of my desire as a community member to try and track sort of the meta discussion that's pulling together a lot of the thoughts that seem to be going month to month.
Yeah, great question. And I'll briefly chime in, but I'll let Steve answer more. Steve Yoder has done just a fantastic job running the data infrastructure for this and developing the algorithms. And but what I'll say is the data dashboards that we've developed come from the Sheriff's Office Spillman system, the jail management system. That system keeps data on everyone coming in and out of the facility, their offenses, their medical history, everything like that, whether or not they have serious mental illness or things like that. And so that information comes out of Spillman and into the dashboards. The MyRC does get data from Spillman once a night. And so it's a big sort of download every night. And so that's one piece of it, but it also gets data from about 14 other sources like, LMH, ED and things like that. So it's one piece of the MyRC data, but it's the main piece of the data dashboards data. Steve, did I miss anything?
No, that's appropriate. I think to understand that MyRC, its primary purpose is to glue case managers, probation officers together so they know they're with the same client. So it's not a database that has a lot of depth in terms of data. It is more or less gluing case managers together. We're working with the same person here. And then as a byproduct, because of that, Matt is able to do the analysis that he's shown that in aggregate, this is where your mutual client overlap and here's your high utilizers.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's actually really helpful.
Thank you.
Darren, one other comment I would make is on the behavioral health side, we're trying to explore how to report out and what to report out to the community in terms of volumes, progress, complexities. And the public health department has a site called Healthier Together, which is the reporting platform for the community health improvement plan. So, one of our objectives, our behavioral health objectives, is to reduce the number of jail bookings of people with serious mental illness into the jail. I think that My Sidewalk platform, as we start to consolidate and do some more sense making, will be a public facing place where you would be able to see some of these numbers and kind of a narrative explanation of that, which is something public health is leading and the collaborative is leading.
I just would love to say yes, please, more of that as a community member, because I do think the dashboards discussion earlier in the year did feel like we are trying to climb Everest, and your reframing today, we're talking about possibly looking at 120 people, and I know not the same population necessarily, but that framework certainly made me feel less like toss it all away. So I think I want to say thanks and yes to that, building that narrative.
Great. Any more questions or comments of the presentation team? I think our last agenda item is Sheriff Armbrister giving us an update on the jail population.
Yeah, and I'll be pretty brief. The jail population currently is, as I'm sitting inside the facility right now, is 146. So in total transparency, because that's what I'm here for, I've made a decision, and I've talked about it briefly and with a lot of you, is that my intention is to begin the process of talking about building a new housing unit onto this. But when I say that, this is not an expansion. Our bed number is 186, and I've talked about functional capacity. Our functional capacity is around 135 to 150, depending on the makeup of the individuals who are housed. And so what I have developed a 3.2 phase plan on how to create this unit and then also tear down and rebuild and reevaluate the 46 bed work release unit into something that is much more community driven with our work reentry programs to start the transition out of incarceration at the facility, and then move into transitional outside resources and make that more seamless. Because what we found is if there is even a 10-minute gap in that person walking out our door and catching the bus, there is a chance they will never make it. And so we are really trying to streamline that process. But my intention is this is going to be a years-long process, and I want to be absolutely transparent. I'm looking for input, negative and positive, on what I need to do to make this happen, because I think that this is the right thing. I think that our current population is our new normal. And I think that we have to just kind of rethink what we have and spend our money in the direction that not only helps the facility itself, but also getting these folks back out so they don't come back, which is not that's the whole reason we're all sitting here. So if you have any questions or anything on any of that, I will be glad to answer or listen. I do have a meeting set up I reached out to Justice Matters and told them my plan and said, I would love to meet with you, if nothing more than to learn what sort of pushback I may receive. And so we can work together through this, and they've been very welcoming. So I hope we have a meeting set up for next week. As far as the facility itself goes, our COVID numbers have been down. We as a sheriff's office have began a mandatory testing of our employees in lieu of a mandate for vaccines. We are 85% vaccinated as an agency, which is unbelievable in my opinion. But we are also starting a mandatory testing for all of our employees who are unvaccinated. It has not been extremely popular, but it is something that we are going to do, and people have been understanding about it. So other than that, that's really kind of, if you have any questions about what's going on or anything I've said in the past, I'm here to answer. But other than that, that's really kind of the view from my world. So I'll just mute and listen to see if you have anything for me.
Do we have anything for the sheriff? Sarah, do you have any updates on the coordinator search?
Maybe we should take Darren's question before we.
Sorry, Darren, I didn't see you had a question.
Yeah, this is just super fast. Sheriff, you mentioned a plan. Has that been released? You're going to release it? Sorry, Darren Kennedy, community member again. Is Justice Matters the rollout of it? That's all I'm.
Here, Darren, I'm going to show you my plan. It's handwritten. So we are talking in the infancy stages of this. And, but I am putting pen to paper. I'm going to draft it out. I want to actually add in some pictures and drawings to make it so people can see what it is I'm talking about. But in the next few weeks, I hope to have something, and our PIO, Georgia Diepenbrock, and I are working together to try to get this out. So that way I can get it to the community so they can give me the feedback, positive or negative. So we're in the very early stages, but I'm hoping to load you all up in the station wagon with me and carry you along. So.
Okay. Just wanted to figure out where that was. Okay, got it.
Tamara, did you have a question, comment?
Yes. In addition to Justice Matters, what other individuals or groups are you reaching out to?
I am taking all comers. So if you know of a group that I should be reaching out to, please let me know, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know of all the resources and groups in this county that have a vested interest in this, because my perspective has always been unique, and in that where I come from, it's just hard for me to know what all is out there. So that's why I'm asking and telling everybody, please let me know who I can go and talk to, what group, what individual, what anything, or invite them in. I am an open book on this. So if you have something, please let me know.
I'm thinking in terms of just a general community meeting.
Oh yeah.
And
oh yeah, absolutely. And I want to, so I want to offer myself to go and visit anybody that would like to have that, but we will definitely have open public forums or whatever you want to call that as we get farther into the process. So again, I'm not trying to pull any punches. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm actually quite proud of this plan. And I think that once people learn what it is that we're trying to do, that I can turn some adversaries into allies. So I appreciate any input that you have for me on who I need to reach out to. Thank you.
Does your current plan in its current status accommodate women in a better fashion than in the past?
Yes, it does. The first phase, which is the unit for isolation, pre-classification, and in today's term, quarantine, does take care of a small percentage of the female population. But phase 3 would actually be adding another minimum females housing unit, so that way we don't have all of the. So currently we have minimum, medium, maximum pre-classification. All the females are housed in one unit. Therefore, a minimum female inmate would get maybe up to 3 hours of free time during the day, whereas a male would get 16 hours, just simply because we can't have the classifications out. So my intention is to build a whole nother unit for the lower classification female inmates, so that way the equity would be raised much, much higher, and get them the time that they deserve, and try to make it equitable between the males and females. So yes, that is absolutely part of my plan.
Well, I feel a little uncomfortable about raising Justice Matters to the level of being the main group that has input on this. And I think I certainly hope you will make more of an effort to reach out to the population, the community at large.
Well, I appreciate what you say, but to say that it make more of an effort, this is very new, Ms. Cash, and they were the first group, because let's face it, they were the ones who stopped the last jail expansion project through a community initiative. And so therefore, they're going to be the ones that I'm going to start with, but I want to hear from everybody. I'm not taking anybody off the table. This is handwritten in my notebook. That's how early we are. So again, I want to reiterate that if you know of a group or an individual that I should be reaching out to, please let me know.
Well, again, I would like to see some initiative taken to create a public forum, whether it's at the library or whatever venue is available.
I'm ready. I'm in. When I have all these ducks in a row, we will get that done. I promise.
Okay, and I don't know if you initiate that or the county initiates it, but I think it should be done soon so as not to encourage misinformation, gossip, whatever.
Understood. Mario?
Yes, I just want to reiterate what Ms. Cash just said, that it is imperative that there is not one organization. Absolutely. I mean, there wasn't even one organization that led the no jail expansion. There were a few. And I think that I might have a list of those that I can provide to you. But I think it's really important that moving in these steps, because they're going to hear the words expand and build out, right. And that's the automatic response that you're going to get, and they're not going to get all of this backstory, just like the community did not get the entire backstory the last time. And so I really want to reiterate that the community listening sessions are going to be where the conversation needs to start, and not put my trust in community organizations, because obviously that's my main gig, that's what I do. But I just think that we can approach this in more than one way at more than one time. It doesn't have to be phases where we talk to this group first and then talk to this, but opening it up will bring those organizations who are doing the groundwork, who are having the conversations on mental health, on how we help our incarcerated community members. And so I really want to put an exclamation point at the end of that request, because I think that's where you're going to get the conversation started. And I would even venture to ask Justice Matter to be an ally in getting the community conversation started, not holding it, but being an ally.
Absolutely. That's my intention, and it has always been my intention through this job, is to turn adversaries into allies. And I feel like through transparency and going at it this direction to be community forward, I feel like is the way to do this. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because this is what I'm asking for.
Yeah, and I'll write down to maybe email you a list of some community members who are already working in the courts and already helping folks. So
I just want to piggyback on Sheriff Armbrister's comments and just really state that in addition, before we quite start the roadshow, I'm encouraging the sheriff to figure out what's possible. We have not talked to an architect yet. We have no idea what we can do. And so I want us to, it's going to be one of these things where we have to try to figure out what's possible and then also get input and feedback as we go back and forth, learning what's possible. So
Right.
We are talking about reusing, renovating space that we already have inside a highly secure facility. It's not easy. So a lot of this stuff some of the things that the sheriff has written down on that notepad might not be possible. And so I think some of the next steps that we will do is bring this before the county commission to figure out what kind of technical expertise do we need to determine what would even be possible, and staying very open, very wide, and trying to keep an open lens as to what's happening. But there will be both back and forth, and I just appreciate the sheriff's transparency in this conversation about what he's thinking and us sharing it with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, but also ask for your patience as we continue to just really figure out what is even possible. And this will be hopefully all of us will be engaged in this process as we learn more about it. But I think that will also be something that happens here in relatively short order. And Pam asked me to give a brief update on the search for the Criminal Justice Coordinator. The position is still posted. So we are encouraging applications. We've decided that we're going to begin to review applications while we keep the position posted. So my hope is that from a staff perspective, we'll do some very initial evaluation of the applications that have been received so far while we continue to keep the position open. So I just encourage folks that if you know someone that might be perfect for this spot, to continue to sort of help us get the word out about the position. And in the meantime, just really myself, Dr. Cravens, Zainaf Daya, Jill Joliker, Bob Tryansky, we've got a whole team here trying to fill in for Mike in his departure. So just reach out to any of us if you have any questions and help us make sure we don't get any balls dropped. I should put Pam on that list too, because she's certainly doing a lot to help this group to keep functioning. But thank you all for your patience as we sort of fumble without him.
Thanks, Sarah. I wanted to find out, do we have any public comments out there, Robin? Has anybody raised their hand to ask questions or anything? No? Zaina? No?
Well, let's just maybe give folks another opportunity that if they want to make public comment, that they should use the raise the hand function on Zoom. And then they will be moved over into the panel to provide comment. And it looks like we have one. So Robin, may move.
I will move Terry over.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Terry.
Hi, so I'm Terry Wilkie. I'm a citizen of Lawrence, Douglas County, Kansas. And I had a question for Suzanne Valdez. I was unaware that there's a policy, we always give expungements. And I don't know if everybody knows, but I calendar on Jaws of Justice on KKFI. And anytime I hear any news of any county offering to work for expungements, I put that in the calendar. So how do you how does one learn that expungements. Is every county in Kansas like Douglas County?
Yeah, so expungement is a matter of state law. And there's certain eligibility for expungement. And it really depends on the level of whether it was a misdemeanor or a felony, and then the level of the felony. Some crimes for which a person has been convicted are not expungible. It's statutory, and there's law behind it. And now that I'm hearing from folks like Marielle and of course Ms. Wilkie, we need to do a better job of getting the word out on it, but we encourage expungements. It's probably one of the best parts of my job. It's a second chance, right, for people to finish up their sentence and then have a clean slate, so to speak. And it does affect housing, it affects voting rights, it affects a lot of different things. So we have an expungement docket once a month. Judge McCabery presides over that docket. You can file a petition for expungement either with private counsel or there actually is Kansas Legal Services provides the representation as well. We do have folks who do it pro se, which means they do it by themselves, which is fine as well. Those forms can be found. They're very readily available, and maybe we should get those on our website. If we have individuals who proceed on their own, our office, with the court grants the order, we will prepare those orders and get those out. So we are thinking of doing expungement fairs or working with the law schools, the law school, KU Law School, to perhaps do these opportunities for people to come in and do them en masse. And that's one of the areas where I think we can do a lot of work and get folks their second chance. So I'll be working on that, and I'll talk to Marielle so she knows kind of what we're doing here, and maybe we can collaborate on those efforts. The other thing, though, that I would say is, even though you have the expungement, what is it that we can do? There's this gap between having this order and then how do we go about serving the community or those who have the expungements to say, hey, listen, this is an individual who has done all of these things since they've been released from incarceration. You hear these wonderful stories of people who are just trying to have their second chance. And I think there's a need there, and certainly a space where the DA's office can advocate and help those who have completed their sentence, because they've completed their sentence. We want to congratulate them on that and give them the second chance that everyone deserves. So did I answer your question?
Yes, you certainly did. And to the best of my faulty memory, I would say it was the ACLU or Legal Aid of Kansas and Missouri that does advertise fairs. And so that's what I'm reduced to putting in the calendar. And perhaps I need to branch out and contact every DA and find out what's your policy, because we'll broadcast that. I think it's good. Thank you.
Every DA's office or county attorney's office has their own policies on promoting it. I'm a big promoter of second chances. And it's definitely something that I'll work on now that I know that we need to get the word out and do something that's more formalized. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you, DA.
Shay, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just going to add that as part of a sentencing, every person who's convicted of something is notified of the right to expungement. The issue is that generally it's not something you can apply for until 3 or 5 years after you complete your sentence and pay all of your outstanding costs. So it's hard to keep track of for individuals. But I'm sure if the DA's office wanted to put together a mass expungement thing, we can find people who are willing to help from the defense side.
Great. Do we have any other public comments out there, Zaina or Robin?
No other hands are up.
Great. Do we have anything else for the good of the order today? Seeing none, I'm going to adjourn the meeting today. Our next meeting is November the 9th. We'll see you all then. Thank you for coming today.
Great meeting. Thank you.